Hudson dove beneath the sunlit waves of the Florida coast, the sunlight filtering through the turquoise water in shimmering rays. Each dive was a new adventure, a new discovery waiting to be made. The ocean was a world of its own, full of mystery and wonder, and Hudson had dedicated his life to exploring its depths. Today he was particularly excited. He had heard reports of a rich coral reef teeming with life just a few miles off the coast. Strapped into his diving gear, he felt the familiar weight of the oxygen tank on his back and the snug fit of his wetsuit. With a final check of his equipment, he descended into the cool embrace of the Atlantic. The underwater world was alive with movement. Schools of fish darted around him in synchronized harmony, their scales reflecting the sunlight in bursts of color. Coral formations like underwater gardens bloomed in every direction. Hudson marveled at the sheer variety of marine life. Brightly colored parrotfish, elusive moray eels, and graceful sea turtles all made appearances as he swam deeper into the reef. He navigated through the labyrinthine coral structures, carefully avoiding delicate sea fans and brain corals. Every so often, he paused to examine a particularly intriguing specimen, taking notes on his underwater slate. Hudson had always been meticulous in his observations, documenting every detail with a scientist's precision. As he ventured further, the water grew cooler and the light dimmer. He knew he was approaching deeper waters where larger, more elusive creatures roamed. It was in these depths that he hoped to encounter something truly extraordinary. His heartbeat quickened with anticipation as he pushed onward, each fin stroke propelling him deeper into the unknown. Hudson's surroundings grew eerily quiet, the constant hum of the reef fading into a muffled silence. It was then that he felt it, a subtle shift in the water, a presence just beyond his field of vision. He turned slowly, his eyes scanning the blue expanse around him. At first he saw nothing, but then, out of the corner of his eye, he caught a glimpse of movement. Emerging from the shadows was a massive Goliath grouper, its sheer size dwarfing everything else in the vicinity. Hudson's breath caught in his throat. The fish was enormous, easily weighing several hundred pounds. Its mottled, olive-green body moved with a slow, deliberate grace, and its eyes, large and unblinking, fixed on him with an unnerving intensity. Hudson knew about Goliath groupers. They were known to be territorial and could become aggressive if they felt threatened. He remained still, hoping the giant fish would lose interest and move on. But the grouper continued to approach, its gaze never wavering. Hudson could feel the tension in the water, a palpable sense of danger that sent adrenaline surging through his veins. He began to back away slowly, trying to maintain a calm and controlled demeanor. Panic is the enemy in situations like this. He had to stay focused and keep his wits about him. But the grouper seemed to interpret his retreat as a sign of weakness. It advanced more quickly, closing the distance between them with alarming speed. Hudson's mind raced. He scanned his surroundings, looking for anything that could provide shelter or a means of escape. His eyes landed on a cluster of rocks jutting out from the seafloor, forming a narrow crevice just large enough for him to squeeze into. Without hesitation, he swam towards it, his movement swift but measured. He reached the rocks and wedged himself into the crevice, his body pressed tightly against the rough stone. The grouper loomed above him, its massive jaws opening and closing in a display of dominance. Hudson's heart pounded in his chest as he watched the fish circle, its dark eyes never leaving him. He could see the powerful muscles rippling beneath its scales and feel the displacement of water with each movement. Minutes passed, though they felt like hours. The grouper showed no signs of retreating. Hudson knew he couldn't stay hidden forever. His oxygen supply was finite, and he needed to find a way back to the surface before it ran out. He formulated a plan, mapping out his route in his mind. If he could reach the shallower waters, he might have a chance of outpacing the grouper. He waited for the right moment, timing his move with the grouper's pattern of circling. When the fish was on the opposite side of the crevice, he pushed off from the rocks with all his strength, propelling himself forward in a burst of speed. The grouper reacted instantly, its massive body cutting through the water in pursuit. Hudson swam as fast as he could, his muscles burning with exertion. He zigzagged through the reef, using the coral formations as obstacles to slow the grouper's advance. The fish was relentless, its powerful tail propelling it forward with alarming speed. Hudson could feel the water pressure changing as the grouper closed in on him, the immense force of its movements creating turbulence that rocked him off balance. He spotted another potential refuge, a narrow canyon between two towering coral structures. With a desperate surge of energy, he darted into the canyon, the walls closing in around him. The grouper's large size worked against it here. It struggled to navigate the tight space, giving Hudson a precious few moments to catch his breath and recalibrate. The canyon led to a wider expanse of the reef, and Hudson used this opportunity to put more distance between himself and the grouper. He swam upwards, aiming for the lighter waters above. The grouper, undeterred, continued its pursuit, but the intricate coral formation slowed its progress. Hudson's lungs burned with the need for fresh air, and he glanced at his oxygen gauge. Time was running out. He burst into the open water, the sunlight filtering down like a beacon of hope. The boat was still a considerable distance away, a small speck against the vast expanse of blue. He kicked harder, his legs straining with the effort. The grouper was gaining on him again, its persistence a testament to its territorial nature. Hudson reached a cluster of boulders scattered across the sandy bottom. He knew he couldn't outswim the grouper forever. He needed a new strategy. He maneuvered around the boulders, using them as a barrier between himself and the fish. The grouper's massive body slammed against the rocks in frustration, but Hudson remained just out of reach. With a burst of inspiration, he grabbed a loose piece of coral, wielding it like a makeshift weapon. He knew it wouldn't do much damage, but it might be enough to deter the grouper and make it think twice about continuing its attack. He waited, poised and ready, as the grouper regrouped for another charge. The fish lunged, its jaws snapping inches from Hudson's face. He swung the coral, striking the grouper's side. It recoiled, more out of surprise than pain, and Hudson took advantage of the momentary hesitation to push himself away from the rocks and towards the open water once more. The boat was closer now, tantalizingly within reach. He swam with every ounce of strength he had left, his body screaming for relief. The grouper followed, but its movements were slower and less aggressive. Hudson's bold move with the coral had made an impact, however slight. He kept his eyes fixed on the boat, his lifeline to safety. As he neared the surface, he could see the outline of the boat's hull, a promise of rescue. His oxygen was nearly depleted, each breath a struggle. The grouper was still behind him, but the shallower waters seemed to be working in Hudson's favor. The fish's powerful body wasn't built for speed in such conditions. Finally, Hudson broke the surface, gasping for air. He pulled himself towards the boat, his arms and legs trembling with exhaustion. The grouper lingered below, its dark form visible in the clear water, but it made no further attempts to attack. Hudson hauled himself aboard, collapsing on the deck, his chest heaving with relief. He lay there for several minutes, staring up at the sky, the ordeal replaying in his mind. The encounter had been a stark reminder of the ocean's untamed nature and of the primal instincts that governed its inhabitants. Hudson had always respected the sea and its creatures, but today had reinforced just how little he truly understood about this vast, mysterious world. The sun, a pale disk in the sky, cast a hazy glow over the calm sea off Japan. Hiro's boat, the Seika, glided through the water as he prepared for deep-sea fishing. With decades of experience, Hiro knew this was the prime time for finding large fish. His tanned, calloused hands gripped the fishing rod with practiced ease as he trolled through a promising area. Hiro cast his line, trailing it behind the boat. The rhythmic hum of the engine and the occasional seabird call were the only sounds breaking the sea's monotony. Hours passed with no sign of a catch, but Hiro remained hopeful for something extraordinary. Suddenly the rod jerked sharply. Hiro's heart raced as he braced himself against the sudden strain. The tension in the line was immense, and Hiro's arms strained to reel in the catch. The boat rocked with each tug, the weight below testing both the line and Hiro's resolve. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he fought to keep the line taut. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours as Hiro battled the unseen creature. The boat pitched and swayed, struggling against the creature's resistance. Hiro's muscles ached, but he pressed on, driven by the desire to discover what was on the other end of the line. His experienced crew watched with awe and concern, knowing this was no ordinary catch. As the strain on the rod peaked, Hiro saw the line slacken and then tighten with renewed vigor. His focus sharpened and his hands moved with precision. Finally, after an eternity of struggle, the shape of the creature emerged from the murky depths. Large and unmistakable, the monstrous figure took form, and Hiro's eyes widened in disbelief. The creature was an enormous squid, its tentacles sprawling like the limbs of some nightmarish beast from a forgotten myth. The squid's body was a dark, sinister hue, its skin glistening with an otherworldly sheen as it undulated in the water. Hiro's pulse quickened as he realized the enormity of the challenge he faced. The squid's tentacles, each one thick and curved, reached out with menacing grace, and Hiro knew that he was in for the fight of his life. With a final Herculean effort, Hiro managed to bring the squid closer to the boat. The creature's massive bulk broke the surface with a splashing heave, and for a moment Hiro and his crew stood stunned, staring at the sight before them. The squid's tentacles were a tangled mass of muscular strength and relentless hunger, each one equipped with rows of robust suction cups. In a desperate bid for freedom, the squid's tentacles began to lash out wildly, their strength palpable even from a distance. One of the tentacles, seemingly aware of the danger, shot out and wrapped itself around the side of the boat. The powerful suction cups clung with a vice-like grip, and the ship shuddered under the impact. Hiro's heart pounded as he realized the severity of the situation. Before Hiro could react, another tentacle snaked out with alarming speed, wrapping itself around his leg with a crushing force. The sudden vice-like grip sent shock waves of pain through his body as the squid began to pull him toward the edge of the boat. Hiro's breath came in ragged gasps, his mind racing with the urgency of the moment. The squid's tentacle pulled him with almost inhuman strength, and the boat rocked violently as the creature's efforts to drag him into the water intensified. The crew sprang into action, their faces a mixture of fear and determination. They scrambled to find tools and weapons, anything that might help them pry the squid off Hiro. Knives were drawn, poles were grabbed, and every available hand was put to work in a desperate attempt to free their comrade. The boat was a cacophony of noise and movement, with each crew member fighting their own battle against the encroaching chaos. The struggle was a frantic, violent ballet. The squid, its beady eyes fixed with unrelenting focus, continued its assault with unyielding persistence. Its tentacles flailed wildly, battering against the sides of the boat with a force that threatened to breach the vessel's integrity. Each strike sent tremors through the ship, causing it to lurch and sway with every impact. Hiro, his leg trapped in the squid's grip, fought to maintain his balance. His hands, slick with sweat, struggled to hold onto anything stable as the boat continued to pitch and roll. The pain in his leg was excruciating, and he could feel the cold grip of the squid's suckers digging into his flesh. His thoughts were a blur of adrenaline and fear, his instincts guiding him through the chaos. The crew worked tirelessly, their hands working in unison to pry the squid's tentacles away from Hiro. Knives flashed in the dim light, slashing at the tentacle's sinewy grip with fierce determination. The poles were thrust with powerful thrusts, aiming to dislodge the squid's hold. Each strike against the tentacle was met with a violent recoil, but the crew persisted, driven by the desperation to save Hiro. The struggle continued, the battle between man and squid escalating with each passing moment. The boat groaned under the pressure, its wooden frame creaking with the strain. The crew's efforts were relentless, their movements a chaotic symphony of urgency and determination. Hiro's leg felt as though it were being slowly crushed, the pain intensifying with each tug of the squid's powerful grip. Finally, with a final coordinated effort, the crew managed to sever one of the squid's tentacles. The creature recoiled, its grip on Hiro loosening just enough for him to escape its clutches. The severed tentacle fell away, its limp, twitching remnants drifting away from the boat. The squid, wounded and enraged, retreated into the depths with a final furious flurry of its remaining tentacles. The boat rocked violently as the squid disappeared beneath the waves, leaving Hiro and the crew to grapple with the encounter's aftermath. Hiro's leg throbbed with pain, and he collapsed onto the deck, his breaths coming in ragged gasps. The crew, though shaken and exhausted, rallied to his side, their faces etched with relief and concern. The aftermath of the encounter was a mixture of shock and awe. Hiro's crew surveyed the damage, their eyes wide with the realization of what they had just survived. The boat bore the marks of the struggle. The battered sides and the scattered tools were evidence of the fierce battle that had taken place. Though battered and bruised, Hero had a newfound respect for the ocean's depths. The encounter with the giant squid had been a reminder of the sea's untamed, unpredictable nature, a force that could turn even the most routine expedition into a fight for survival. The icy waters off the coast of Norway shimmered in a crystal-clear blue, intensifying Jake's sense of isolation as he paddled his kayak through the serene expanse. The low-hanging sun cast long shadows across the water, bathing the rugged coastline in a warm golden glow. A faint breeze whispered Arctic tales, but Jake's focus was solely on the pod of orcas surfacing in the distance. Their powerful dorsal fins sliced through the water with an elegance that belied their size. Jake had dedicated years to studying marine wildlife, and witnessing orcas in their natural habitat was the pinnacle of his career. He had spent countless hours tracking their migratory patterns and analyzing their behavior from afar, but this close encounter was a rare privilege he intended to savor. The pod moved with synchronized grace, their sleek bodies gliding effortlessly beneath the surface. Jake's heart raced with excitement as he carefully maneuvered his kayak closer, striving to capture the perfect photographs while maintaining a respectful distance. The orcas, aware of his presence, exhibited a mix of curiosity and wariness. They swam in tight formations, their movements fluid and coordinated. The calves, playful and exuberant, occasionally breached the surface, their high-pitched calls echoing through the crisp air. Jake marveled at their social structure and the care the adults showed the young ones. However, amid this captivating spectacle, a large male orca with striking black and white coloration began to exhibit signs of agitation. Unlike the others, this orca circled Jake's kayak with intense focus. Jake's initial concern turned to intrigue. He had read about orcas displaying territorial or defensive behaviors, but this was the first time he was witnessing it firsthand. The male orca's circling grew increasingly aggressive. He swam close to the kayak, retreated, and then returned with greater force. The orca's movements were deliberate, as if gauging the kayak's stability and Jake's reaction. The calm demeanor Jake had maintained began to shift. He was now an active participant in a potentially dangerous interaction. The orca's behavior became more erratic. Each pass bumped the kayak harder, causing it to rock violently. Jake felt the impacts reverberate through the hull, pushing him closer to the edge of stability. He gripped his paddle tightly, knuckles whitening as he struggled to maintain control. The once comforting cold of the water now felt hostile, a stark reminder of the potential danger. Jake tried to steady his racing heart as he adjusted his position, facing the orca. He knew sudden movements might provoke the animal further, but the relentless aggression made composure difficult. The orca's dorsal fin cut through the water more frequently, signaling an increasing focus on Jake's kayak. The animal's cold, unblinking eye was fixed on him with unnerving intensity. Without warning, the orca breached the surface with a powerful thrust. Jake's eyes widened as the massive creature's head emerged, jaws snapping with a force that echoed through the air. The kayak, already compromised by the orca's previous bumps, was struck with a violent force. The impact was jarring, and Jake was thrown off balance as the kayak tipped precariously. In a split second, the kayak was overturned, and Jake plunged into the icy embrace of the water. The shock of the cold was immediate and all-encompassing, numbing his senses as he struggled to orient himself. The orca, undeterred by the kayak's disarray, continued its aggressive pursuit. Jake could feel the orca's massive body brushing against him, its presence both immense and intimidating. Jake's mind raced as he tried to regain his composure. He knew that maintaining calm was crucial for survival. The water was frigid, its cold seeping through his wetsuit and numbing his extremities. The orca's relentless nudges and the sheer force of its movements made it clear that it was not merely curious. It was intent on either displacing or subduing him. The situation was dire, and every second counted. With careful, deliberate movements, Jake began to swim toward the overturned kayak. The orca, sensing his intention, became even more aggressive, its massive body slamming against him with increasing force. Jake could feel the pressure of the orca's body as it nudged him away from the kayak, its breath coming in short, forceful bursts. He had to think quickly and use every ounce of his training to stay alive. The kayak floated a few meters away, its overturned hull partially submerged. Jake fought against the cold and the orca's aggressive behavior as he reached out, trying to grab the kayak's edge. The orca seemed to sense the urgency of his actions, and its aggression intensified. Jake's attempts to right the kayak were met with renewed forceful bumps, and the orca's jaws snapped dangerously close to his legs. Despite his fear and physical struggle, Jake's instincts took over. He grasped the kayak and began the painstaking task of flipping it back over. The orca's behavior was erratic, alternating between aggression and confusion. Jake used all his strength and focus to complete the maneuver and finally right the kayak. Once stable, Jake struggled to pull himself back aboard. The relentless orca continued to press against the kayak, its powerful tail propelling it through the water with intimidating force. Jake moved cautiously but with determination, avoiding provoking the orca while trying to regain control. With one final effort, Jake climbed into the kayak. The orca, recognizing the end of the immediate struggle, ceased its aggression but lingered nearby. Breathing heavily, Jake adjusted his position and grabbed his paddle. The immediate danger had passed, though he remained shaken. Paddling away as fast as he could, Jake's heart raced from the adrenaline of the encounter. The orca followed briefly before rejoining its pod, which receded into the distance. The once inviting icy water now felt hostile, a reminder of the wild's unpredictability. As Jake neared the shore, the waves seemed like obstacles, each ripple a reminder of the near danger. Determined, he paddled on, resolved to share his experience and the lessons learned. The coast brought relief, and Jake felt a deep gratitude and respect for the wild. The orca's aggressive behavior was a stark reminder of nature's power and unpredictability, reinforcing the delicate balance between human curiosity and wildlife's raw strength. In August 2005, the sun shone brightly over the crystal-clear waters of the Exuma Cays in the Bahamas. This group of islands, known for their vibrant coral reefs and turquoise waters, was a paradise for tourists seeking adventure beneath the waves. Among the visitors that day was 18-year-old Alex Thompson, a recent high school graduate from Boston, who was on a much-anticipated vacation with his family. The trip to the Bahamas was a gift from his parents, celebrating his upcoming journey to college. Alex had always loved the ocean, and the chance to explore one of the world's most beautiful marine environments was a dream come true. That morning, Alex and his family boarded a boat for a guided snorkeling tour around the coral reefs. The guide, a local Bahamian named Terrence, was an experienced diver who knew the waters like the back of his hand. He had led countless tours and was familiar with the marine life that called the reefs home, including the harmless reef sharks that often swam nearby. Terrence assured the group that these sharks posed no threat to snorkelers, and the group eagerly prepared for their adventure. The boat ride to the snorkeling site was a thrill in itself. The water was so clear that Alex could see the coral formations and schools of fish passing beneath the boat. The islands of Exuma were like jewels scattered across the ocean, their white sand beaches contrasting sharply with the deep blue sea. As the boat anchored near a particularly vibrant reef, the group prepared to enter the water. They donned their snorkeling gear, checked their fins, and slid into the warm embrace of the Caribbean Sea. The underwater world was breathtaking. The coral was alive with color, vivid reds, oranges, and purples, and teeming with life. Schools of fish darted around the group, their scales shimmering in the sunlight that filtered down through the water. Alex was in awe, his heart racing with excitement as he floated above the reef, watching the marine life go about its day. He felt a sense of peace and connection to the ocean that he had never experienced before. As the group swam further from the boat, they marveled at the beauty of the reef, snapping photos with their underwater cameras and pointing out the different species of fish. Terrence led the way, guiding them toward a deeper part of the reef where the coral formations were more pronounced. The water was calm and the group felt completely at ease as they explored the vibrant ecosystem below. But the tranquility of the day was about to be shattered. Unbeknownst to the group, a school of fish had been disturbed nearby, attracting the attention of several reef sharks. These sleek predators, though usually uninterested in humans, were drawn by the commotion. More concerning, however, was the presence of two bull sharks, larger and far more aggressive than the reef sharks. Bull sharks are known for their unpredictable nature and are considered one of the most dangerous shark species. The scent of fish and the activity around the reef had brought them in closer, and they were now circling the group, their interest piqued. The water, once so clear and inviting, suddenly felt different. Alex noticed the change first, the way the fish around him seemed to scatter, the subtle shift in the water's energy. He turned to see Terrence, who had stopped swimming and was scanning the area with a look of concern. Before Alex could process what was happening, a large shadow passed beneath him, and his heart leaped into his throat. A bull shark, nearly 10 feet long, had emerged from the depths, its powerful body gliding through the water with silent menace. The shark circled the group, joined by another of its kind, as the smaller reef sharks followed in their wake. The once peaceful snorkeling trip had turned into a scene of impending danger. Terrence signaled for the group to stay close and remain calm, but the situation quickly escalated. One of the bull sharks, sensing an opportunity, charged at Alex, its muscular body propelling it forward with terrifying speed. The impact was sudden and brutal, the shark's snout ramming into Alex's side and knocking the snorkel from his mouth. The force of the hit sent him spiraling into the water, disoriented and panicked. As Alex struggled to regain his bearings, he felt a sharp pain in his leg. A small cut, likely from a piece of coral, had opened up, and the scent of blood was now in the water. The sharks, already agitated, became frenzied. The reef sharks snapped at the water around Alex while the bull sharks circled closer. Their eyes locked on him as if they had found easy prey. Fear surged through Alex as he tried to swim back to the group, but the sharks were relentless. They swarmed around him, their bodies moving with a deadly grace. Alex kicked out with his fins, using them to push the sharks away, but they kept coming. The water churned as the predators closed in, and Alex could see the flash of teeth as one of the reef sharks snapped at his arm, narrowly missing him. Terrence and the other snorkelers formed a tight circle, their backs to each other as they tried to fend off the sharks. They used their snorkels and flippers to create a barrier, hitting the water to keep the predators at bay. But the bull sharks were persistent, their aggression fueled by the scent of blood and the chaos in the water. The situation was dire, and Alex knew that their only hope was to reach the safety of the boat. Terrence, recognizing the danger, signaled for everyone to move as one toward the boat. The group swam together, staying close, their movements slow and deliberate to avoid further provoking the sharks. The sharks continued to circle, but the group's unity and determination kept them from making another attack. With every stroke, the boat grew closer, but the sharks followed, unwilling to let their prey escape so easily. The adrenaline in Alex's veins pushed him forward despite the pain in his leg and the terror gripping his heart. Finally, they reached the boat, and the crew pulled them aboard, their faces pale with fear and relief. As the last person was pulled from the water, the sharks made one final pass, circling the boat before disappearing into the depths. The group collapsed on the deck, gasping for breath, their bodies trembling from the ordeal. Alex looked down at his leg, the small cut now an angry red, but he was alive. The encounter had left him shaken, a stark reminder of the ocean's unpredictable and dangerous side. The sun cast a golden sheen over the serene lake in East Africa, its warm rays creating a mirror-like surface that reflected the lush vegetation surrounding the water. Peter, a seasoned traveler with an adventurous spirit, had spent the better part of the morning exploring the idyllic landscape. The heat of the day had driven him to seek solace in the cool embrace of the lake. As he waded into the refreshing water, the contrast between the searing heat and the lake's crisp chill was invigorating. The lake's calm appearance belied its hidden dangers. While Peter swam leisurely, enjoying the isolation and tranquility, he was unaware of the predator lurking beneath the surface. The formidable Nile crocodile had long made the lake its home. Its stealth and patience were legendary, perfectly adapted to its role as an apex predator in this watery realm. Peter's strokes were rhythmic and smooth, his body cutting through the water with ease. He ventured further from the shore, drawn by the allure of the lake's expansive openness. The surrounding dense and verdant vegetation created a natural amphitheater that seemed to frame the scene in a serene yet deceptive beauty. The only sounds were the gentle lapping of water against Peter's body and the occasional call of a distant bird. Beneath the tranquil surface, the crocodile's senses were acutely attuned to any disturbance. Its eyes, barely breaking the water's surface, tracked Peter's movements with calculated precision. The crocodile's powerful body lay in wait, every muscle coiled in readiness. Its ancient instincts told it that an opportunity was approaching, and it prepared to strike. Without warning, the lake's deceptive calm was shattered. The crocodile surged from below, a burst of raw power and aggression propelling it upward with terrifying speed. Peter's serene swimming was abruptly interrupted as the creature's massive jaws clamped down on his torso. The force was immense, the pressure excruciating, and the shock was immediate. Peter's initial reaction was one of disbelief and panic. His mind raced, trying to comprehend the violent transition from peace to terror. The crocodile's jaws were like a vice, and its strength was overwhelming. The creature's intention was clear: to drag its prey underwater and initiate a death roll, a brutal maneuver designed to disorient and drown. As Peter was pulled beneath the surface, the water closed in around him, the light above fading into murky darkness. The crocodile's powerful body coiled and twisted, its momentum creating a whirlpool that threatened to pull Peter further into the abyss. Every instinct Peter had honed through years of travel and adventure screamed at him to survive. The cold, oppressive water was a stark contrast to the lake's earlier serene facade. He fought desperately, his arms and legs flailing against the crushing force of the crocodile's jaws. The sensation of being trapped in a relentless vice was terrifying. But Peter's will to survive was stronger than the crocodile's grip. His fists struck out, making contact with the crocodile's rough, armored skin. Each punch was a desperate attempt to inflict pain and force the predator to relent. The crocodile, however, was relentless. Its grip was unyielding, and the spinning motion of the death roll only added to the disorientation. Peter's lungs burned for air, the need for oxygen becoming an ever-present, urgent demand. In a final act of sheer willpower, Peter used his feet to push against the crocodile's body. He managed to get a partial but crucial reprieve from the relentless spinning. His hands, now searching frantically, found the crocodile's eyes, vulnerable and sensitive. With fierce determination, Peter gouged at them, his fingers pressing into the soft, protective tissues. The crocodile's reaction was immediate and intuitive. The creature's jaws released their grip momentarily, a reflexive response to the intense pain inflicted on its eyes. The brief cessation of pressure was Peter's chance for survival. Gasping for air, he kicked and paddled furiously, propelling himself upward through the swirling water. His vision was still clouded, and the world above seemed distant and unreachable. But he fought through the disorientation with all the strength he had left. Breaking through the surface, Peter's breath came in ragged, desperate gasps. The lake's once peaceful expanse now seemed like an unforgiving expanse of survival. He could see the distant outline of a boat, its presence a beacon of hope amidst the chaos. The crocodile, though still in pursuit, had been momentarily disoriented by Peter's counterattack. Peter's instinct to move towards the boat was a lifeline, and he swam with all the power he could muster. Each stroke was a battle against the fatigue that threatened to overtake him. His body was battered, and the pain from the crocodile's attack was intense, but the sight of the boat kept him focused. The adrenaline surging through his veins provided a fleeting but vital strength. The ship seemed to inch closer with every stroke, its promise of safety a compelling goal. The crocodile, driven by its primal hunger, pursued relentlessly, its powerful tail propelling it through the water with formidable speed. But Peter's determination was unwavering. He reached the boat, his fingers grasping the edge as he pulled himself up with a final desperate effort. The ship, once a distant hope, was now his sanctuary. The crocodile, its prey now out of reach, submerged back into the depths, its hunger unsatisfied but its chance for a kill thwarted. Peter collapsed onto the boat, his body trembling with exhaustion and shock. The severity of his injuries was evident. The bite marks were deep, and the wounds were bleeding freely. His clothes were torn and his skin was a canvas of bruises and abrasions. The pain was overwhelming, but the relief of having escaped the immediate threat was profound. The boat, once a mere object of distant hope, now provided Peter with a semblance of safety. His breaths came in ragged gasps as he tried to steady himself, the reality of the encounter sinking in. The serene lake, which had seemed so inviting earlier, now held a dark memory of danger and near death. Peter's survival was a testament to his resilience and quick thinking. The encounter with the Nile crocodile had been a brutal reminder of nature's raw power and the thin line between tranquility and peril. As he lay on the boat, the lake's calm surface now seemed like a deceptive mask hiding its latent threats. Peter's experience would forever shape his perspective on the serene beauty of nature, reminding him that even the most peaceful settings could harbor hidden dangers. In November 1998, the small village of Asuom, nestled deep in the heart of Ghana, was enduring the peak of the dry season. The land was parched. The once lush greenery is now a faded memory. The sun beat down mercilessly each day, and the villagers sought relief wherever they could find it. For many, this meant visiting the local waterhole, a source of life and refreshment in an otherwise unforgiving landscape. The waterhole, located just outside the village, had always been a gathering place for the community. It was where children learned to swim, women washed clothes, and men cooled off after a long day's work. The water was shallow near the edges but grew deeper towards the center, where the older boys often dared each other to dive. Though the villagers knew the risks of swimming in natural bodies of water in Africa, they felt safe at this particular spot. The waterhole had been a haven for generations, and no one could recall a time when anything dangerous had happened there. Kofi Osei, a young man of 18, was among those who frequently visited the waterhole. Tall and strong, with a bright future ahead of him, Kofi was well liked in the village. He was known for his kindness and his love of swimming. On this day, Kofi had finished his chores early and decided to head to the waterhole for a swim. The air was heavy with heat, and the thought of cool water was irresistible. As he walked towards the waterhole, he passed by friends and neighbors who greeted him warmly. It was a typical day in Asuom. Children played in the dusty streets, women gathered under the shade of trees, and men discussed the upcoming harvest season. There was a sense of peace and normalcy that belied the lurking danger. The waterhole itself was a picture of serenity. The surface of the water shimmered under the bright sun, reflecting the clear blue sky above. The trees surrounding the waterhole provided some shade, casting dappled shadows on the water. Birds chirped from the branches, and the occasional splash could be heard as fish broke the surface. To anyone watching, it seemed like a perfect day. But beneath the calm surface, hidden in the murky depths, danger lay in wait. The dry season had forced many animals to seek out new water sources, and a large Nile crocodile had recently made the waterhole its home. The villagers were unaware of the crocodile's presence, as it remained hidden in the deeper parts of the waterhole, biding its time. Nile crocodiles are known for their patience and stealth, often lying in wait for hours, even days, before striking with lethal force. Kofi reached the waterhole and quickly stripped down to his shorts. He dipped his toes into the water, relishing the coolness against his skin. With a smile, he waded in, feeling the tension of the day melt away. He swam out towards the center where the water was deepest, unaware of the predator that lurked below. The water was cool and inviting, and Kofi felt completely at ease. As he floated on his back, looking up at the sky, Kofi couldn't have imagined the horror that was about to unfold. Without warning, the surface of the water erupted in a violent splash. The crocodile, having waited for the perfect moment, launched itself at Kofi with terrifying speed. Its powerful jaws clamped down on his midsection, the force of the bite knocking the air out of his lungs and sending shockwaves of pain through his body. The attack was so sudden and brutal that Kofi didn't even have time to scream before he was pulled under the water. The crocodile's teeth, sharp and strong, dug deep into Kofi's flesh, and the predator began to drag him toward the bottom of the waterhole. The water around them churned as Kofi struggled desperately, his instincts kicking in as he fought for his life. He kicked and punched at the crocodile, trying to free himself from its vice-like grip, but the animal was relentless. It had locked onto its prey, and there was no escape. As Kofi thrashed in the water, the crocodile performed its infamous death roll, twisting its massive body with incredible force. The roll was designed to disorient and subdue its prey, and it worked to devastating effect. Kofi's body was whipped around, and the force of the roll caused him to lose all sense of direction. The pain was overwhelming, and his lungs burned as he fought to hold his breath. The world around him became a blur of dark water and pain. On the shore, a group of villagers had heard the commotion and rushed to the waterhole. They watched in horror as the water turned red with blood, the surface churning as Kofi and the crocodile struggled beneath. Some of the men grabbed sticks and rocks, desperate to help, but they were too far away to intervene. The crocodile was too strong and too determined, and Kofi's chances of survival were slipping away with each passing second. The villagers shouted and waved their arms, hoping to scare the crocodile away, but the predator was focused solely on its prey. It continued to drag Kofi deeper into the water, the struggle becoming more frantic as the young man's strength began to fade. The waterhole, once a place of peace and safety, had become a scene of unimaginable horror. As the crocodile pulled Kofi under for the final time, the water grew still. The villagers stood on the shore, their faces pale with shock and disbelief. The water, now stained with blood, lapped gently against the shore as if nothing had happened. The silence was deafening, broken only by the soft cries of the women who had come to see what had happened. Kofi was gone, taken by the predator that had made the waterhole its hunting ground. The village of Asuom would never be the same. The incident served as a chilling reminder of the dangers that can lurk even in the most familiar and seemingly safe places. The waterhole, once a symbol of life and community, had become a place of fear and loss. In the days that followed, the villagers mourned the loss of Kofi, their hearts heavy with grief. They vowed to be more cautious and to never take the safety of their surroundings for granted again. The waterhole, once the center of village life, was now a place of sorrow, a stark reminder of the brutal reality of life in the wild. The underwater environment was eerily still, broken only by the occasional exhale of air. Sarah was diving in a secluded spot off the coast of Hawaii, known for its intricate network of underwater caves and rich marine life. Her excitement was palpable as she glided through the clear water, surrounded by a vibrant blend of coral and aquatic flora. The cave system she explored was a labyrinth of narrow passages and vast chambers, its walls adorned with colorful anemones clinging to the rocks. Sarah moved cautiously, deliberately avoiding any disturbance to the delicate ecosystem. Her scuba gear provided a steady oxygen supply, and she monitored her air gauge closely, mindful of the need to return to the surface in time. Navigating a particularly narrow section, Sarah's flashlight beam caught the glint of something hidden among the rocks. Adjusting her position for a clearer view, she discovered a large moray eel coiled in the shadows. Its thick, segmented body and row of sharp, barely visible teeth made it an imposing presence. The eel's dark, watchful eyes seemed to track her every move. Despite her excitement, Sarah's heart raced with concern. Moray eels can be aggressive when threatened, and she knew the risks. Her breathing was steady as she tried to remain calm, aware that sudden movements might provoke the creature. The eel's tension grew as Sarah slowly attempted to back away, but the narrow passage restricted her movement. As she carefully maneuvered, the eel reacted. It darted forward with surprising speed, its sleek body a blur against the dark rock. Sarah's instincts surged as the eel's mouth opened wide, displaying its menacing teeth. It lunged, closing its powerful jaws around Sarah's leg with a jarring, searing pain. The bite was intense, the pressure of the eel's grip a stark contrast to the otherwise cool, enveloping water. Sarah's first reaction was to try to pull away, but the eel's grip was unyielding. She twisted her leg, trying to dislodge the eel, but it held fast. The pain intensified with each movement, and her vision blurred slightly as her body's stress response kicked in. Her mind raced through the emergency protocols she had learned. But at the moment, everything felt chaotic and disorienting. Desperation fueled her actions as she reached for her diving knife, strapped securely to her thigh. She fumbled with the knife, the small compartment of her diving suit making it challenging to maneuver. Finally, she managed to draw the knife and, with a trembling hand, brought it down toward the eel. The blade cut through the water with precision, aimed directly at the eel's body. The first stab made contact, but the eel's grip didn't falter. Sarah felt a surge of frustration as the eel's powerful jaws continued to press against her leg. The wound was deep, and the pain radiated through her limb, mingling with the cold, numbing sensation of the surrounding water. Her breathing was ragged, Each inhale was a struggle as the limited air supply in her tank became a pressing concern. In a fierce effort, Sarah stabbed the eel repeatedly, each strike a desperate plea for release. The struggle between her and the eel grew more intense, the water around them becoming murky with the churned-up sediment. Her movements were frantic, driven by a primal urge to escape the clutches of the dangerous creature. Her mind was a whirlwind of thoughts about the dwindling air supply, the pain in her leg, and the urgent need to find safety. The eel, feeling the increasing pressure and pain from Sarah's attacks, finally released its grip, its body writhing away. For a brief moment, Sarah was free, but the relief was fleeting. Her leg throbbed with an unbearable intensity. The bite wounds were a stark reminder of the encounter. Blood mingled with the water, creating a cloud around her as she tried to assess the damage and regain her composure. With the eel retreating into the cave's dark crevices, Sarah took advantage of the brief respite to swim toward the cave's exit. The narrow passage was still a challenge, but she focused on moving steadily, her mind racing with the urgency of the situation. Each stroke was a struggle against the increasing pain and the growing sense of exhaustion. The water seemed to press against her with a heavier weight as she swam, her leg throbbing with every movement. Her air gauge showed a critical level, the needle inching toward empty. Panic crept into her thoughts, but she fought to keep it at bay, concentrating on the need to reach the surface before her oxygen ran out. As she emerged from the cave and into the open water, the pressure of the situation began to lift, though the pain in her leg was still intense. The surface seemed almost blindingly bright compared to the dim light of the cave, and Sarah oriented herself toward the boat anchored nearby. Each stroke toward the boat felt like an eternity, her energy waning with every movement. The boat loomed closer, a beacon of safety amidst the vast expanse of ocean. Sarah could see the faint figures of her fellow divers on board, their attention focused on their tasks. With a final burst of strength, she reached the boat, her arms weakly grasping the ladder. The pain in her leg was a relentless reminder of the ordeal, but the sight of the vessel and the reassurance of its presence brought a measure of relief. The climb up the ladder was arduous, her leg throbbing with every step. Her fellow divers quickly noticed her distress, their faces a mix of concern and surprise as they helped her aboard. The captain called for emergency assistance, and Sarah was carefully laid down on the deck, her leg elevated to minimize further bleeding. The boat's crew worked swiftly, providing first aid and preparing for the arrival of medical professionals. Sarah's mind was a blur of pain and exhaustion, but the knowledge that she was safe and receiving help provided some comfort. The ordeal had left her physically and emotionally drained, but it also offered a stark reminder of the unpredictable nature of underwater exploration. As the boat made its way back to shore, Sarah's thoughts drifted to the experience she had just endured. The encounter with the moray eel had been a harrowing reminder of the dangers that lurk beneath the surface, even in the most beautiful and serene environments. The vivid memory of the eel's bite, the pain, and the struggle for survival would remain with her as a testament to the fragility and unpredictability of life beneath the waves. The leg injury was severe, and the healing process would be long and challenging. Yet the experience had also deepened her respect for the ocean and its inhabitants. Sarah's encounter with the moray eel was a stark reminder of the balance between exploration and caution, a lesson learned most intensely and unforgettably. The sun shone brightly over the crystal-clear waters of the Bahamas, casting a golden hue over the tranquil sea. A gentle breeze rustled the palm trees lining the shore, and the rhythmic sound of waves lapping against the sides of the boat provided a soothing background. The Williams family had been looking forward to this vacation for months. It was their chance to escape the grind of daily life and immerse themselves in the beauty and serenity of the islands. On board a boat, the family laughed and played, relishing the perfect day. 12-year-old Mason, brimming with youthful energy, teased his 14-year-old sister Amy, who was more cautious and thoughtful. Their parents, Hugo and Lisa, watched them with a mix of amusement and mild apprehension, aware of the boundless curiosity and mischief that often accompanied their son's playful nature. Hugo had spent the morning lecturing the children on the importance of safety, especially in a place like this. The waters were not only beautiful, but also home to a variety of marine life, including reef sharks. He had made it clear that while these sharks were not typically aggressive, Respect and caution were paramount. Mason, however, was not one to be easily deterred by warnings. His adventurous spirit often overrode his sense of caution, much to the chagrin of his parents. As the boat drifted near a secluded reef, the family decided it was the perfect spot to take a break and enjoy the weather. The water was inviting, and the sunlight danced on the surface, creating a mesmerizing mosaic of light and shadow. Amy hesitated at first, peering over the edge of the boat into the seemingly bottomless blue. She loved the ocean but was wary of its mysteries. Mason, on the other hand, was already poised to leap. His excitement was barely contained. Mason, filled with a sudden burst of energy, ran towards Amy, a mischievous grin spreading across his face. Amy, sensing his intent, started to back away, but she was too slow. With a playful yet forceful shove, Mason pushed her off balance. She teetered on the edge for a heartbeat before falling into the water with a splash. The initial shock of the cool water was quickly replaced by a surge of panic. She surfaced, gasping for air, her eyes wide with fear and confusion. Mason's laughter died in his throat as he realized the gravity of what he had done. He looked over the edge of the boat, calling out to his sister, but his voice was drowned out by the beating of his heart and the rising tension in the air. Hugo and Lisa turned at the sound of the splash, their hearts dropping as they saw Amy in the water. Instinct took over. Hugo rushed to the side of the boat, scanning the waters for any sign of danger. He knew that sharks were drawn by vibrations and the thrashing of prey. Amy's frantic movements could easily attract them. The water around Amy was deceptively calm, the surface unbroken save for the ripples from her splashing. But below, shadows began to materialize, moving with an unsettling grace and purpose. Reef sharks, curious and opportunistic, started to circle. Their sleek, muscular bodies moved effortlessly through the water, their dark eyes fixed on the source of the commotion above. Panic gripped Mason as he saw the fins break the surface. He felt a cold dread settle in his stomach, realizing the potential consequences of his actions. He wanted to jump in and help his sister, but fear paralyzed him. Lisa grabbed his arm, her face pale but determined, and looked to Hugo for a plan. Amy, despite her terror, remembered her father's lessons. She forced herself to stop thrashing and to remain as calm as possible. She floated on her back, making herself appear larger and less like prey. Her heart raced, but she kept her movements slow and deliberate, hoping to avoid provoking the sharks. Hugo grabbed a life preserver and a rope, tossing them towards Amy. He called out to her, his voice steady and reassuring despite the urgency of the situation. Amy reached for the life preserver, her fingers trembling as she grasped it tightly. Hugo and Lisa began to pull her towards the boat, their eyes never leaving the circling sharks. The sharks grew bolder, and their curiosity was piqued by the activity. One of them swam closer, its dorsal fin cutting through the water like a knife. Hugo's heart pounded in his chest as he continued to reel Amy in, knowing that every second counted. He shouted for Lisa to get the boat's emergency horn, hoping the noise would deter the sharks. Lisa scrambled to the cabin, her hands shaking as she searched for the horn. She found it and ran back, pressing the button. A loud, piercing sound echoed across the water, startling the sharks. They paused, their sleek bodies twitching in response to the unfamiliar noise. It bought them precious seconds. Amy was now within reach. Hugo leaned over, grabbing her arm and pulling her up with all his strength. She scrambled onto the deck, her body shaking with adrenaline and relief. Lisa wrapped her in a towel, holding her close as she whispered soothing words. Mason stood nearby, tears streaming down his face as he watched his sister, guilt and fear etched into his features. The sharks, momentarily deterred by the noise, resumed their circling, but it was clear that their interest was waning. Without the frantic splashing and movement, they lost their initial curiosity. Slowly, they began to drift away, disappearing into the depths from which they had emerged. On the boat, the family huddled together, the weight of the moment settling over them. Hugo held Amy tightly, feeling the rapid beat of her heart against his chest. He looked at Mason, his expression a mix of anger and relief. They'd been incredibly lucky. It could have ended so much worse. The rest of the day passed in somber reflection. The joy and lightness of the morning were replaced by a sober awareness of the fragility of life. One afternoon in 2011, Amelia Sinclair, a 32-year-old marketing executive from New York, decided it would be an exhilarating experience to cool off in the crystal-clear waters off the coast of her resort in Nassau, the Bahamas. Amelia had always loved the ocean and became enchanted with the vast array of sea life present in these tropical waters. She had just drifted off into a peaceful float when she saw a dorsal fin rising through the waves not far from her. Amelia exclaimed, looking at what seemed to be a dolphin filled with excitement. Dolphins were her favorite animals. She hoped to spot some during her vacation. She didn't hesitate but started swimming towards the fin, eager to get a closer look at the creature. The closer she got, though, the more erratic and aggressive the dolphin movements began to seem to Amelia than what she would expect. The dorsal fin also appeared much larger than that of a typical dolphin. Then a huge gray body broke the surface, showing rows of razor-sharp teeth. It was no dolphin at all, but a huge bull shark, one of the ocean's deadliest predators. Amelia's heart raced as she realized the gross mistake she had just made. Bull sharks were extremely territorial and known to be aggressive toward humans, responsible for many unprovoked attacks every year. She did realize, though, that she would get away from the shark fast. It was charging toward her with its powerful physique. Fast thinking, Amelia looked around her and saw a large driftwood floating nearby. She grabbed and held it out, fending off the shark's repeated advances with a makeshift weapon. The bull shark thrashed and circled her, its black eyes locked on its potential prey. Amelia struggled to fend off the relentless shark, her arms growing weary from the desperate effort. Just as she felt her strength fading and hope slipping away, the distant hum of a boat engine reached her ears, signaling a glimmer of rescue when she needed it most. A small charter fishing vessel had spotted the commotion and was racing toward her. The captain and his first mate began yelling and throwing a life preserver toward Amelia as the boat drew closer. She gratefully grabbed the line and they pulled her to safety just as the shark lunged in her direction. Finally, safe aboard, Amelia collapsed, shaking from adrenaline and fear of her near-death experience. The captain radioed his report to the Coast Guard, and soon, a team of marine biologists and emergency responders was on the scene. Amelia was rushed to a local hospital where doctors checked her up and treated the minor cuts and scrapes she had sustained from the shark attack. She was kept overnight for observation, much to the relief of her worried parents back home in New York, whom she got in touch with quickly to recount the harrowing ordeal. Amelia told the doctors that she could not believe she had mistaken a shark for a dolphin and thought she was going to die out there. The bull shark was much bigger and more aggressive than she had ever imagined. Amelia was grateful to the fishermen who saved her in time. The marine biologists responding to the scene were astounded that Amelia could keep the shark at bay with the driftwood that long. They commended her presence of mind and bravery in the face of such a dangerous predator. Dr. Sofia Martinez, the lead marine biologist on the scene, explained that bull sharks were among the most aggressive shark species, responsible for a disproportionately high number of attacks on humans, and that Miss Sinclair was able to hold the shark at bay for several minutes before help arrived was truly remarkable. She was very lucky to be alive. The next day, still in shock but relieved, Amelia told her story to the local authorities in the hospital. She gave a full statement, hoping that her experience would allow others to learn how dangerous it was not to recognize sharks as being different from other fish. Yet despite the psychological scarring, Amelia refused to allow the incident to destroy her love for the ocean. She pledged always to be better informed about marine life and more careful when venturing into unfamiliar waters. For the remainder of her holiday, she avoided all beaches with large numbers of sharks. Upon her return to New York, Amelia began to appreciate the power and unpredictability of apex predators in the ocean. Certainly the trauma from her encounter with the bull shark would not just disappear, but she knew she now had the appreciation that was needed all along, respect for what lay below, both in terms of wonder and danger. April 2003, Jake Thornton, a seasoned adventurer and outdoor enthusiast, set out on a solo kayaking trip along the rugged coastline of New Zealand's South Island. Jake had always been drawn to the sea, and the stretch of ocean near Kaikoura was one of his favorite places to paddle. The region was known for its stunning scenery, with towering cliffs, rocky outcrops, and the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean stretching out to the horizon. On that particular day, the weather was perfect. The sky was clear, the sea was calm, and there was a slight breeze that made the conditions ideal for kayaking. Jake was an experienced kayaker, having spent years exploring various waterways across New Zealand and beyond. He was well prepared for the journey, equipped with all the necessary gear and a keen sense of adventure. That morning he had launched his kayak from a small, secluded beach, eager to spend the day navigating the coastline, exploring hidden coves, and maybe even spotting some of the region's abundant marine life. The area was known for its dolphins, seals, and occasionally larger predators like orcas and sharks. But Jake wasn't concerned. He had been in these waters many times before and knew how to handle himself. As he paddled further out to sea, the tranquility of the open ocean enveloped him. The rhythmic sound of the paddle dipping into the water and the gentle swaying of the kayak was almost meditative. Jake relished the solitude, the feeling of being completely alone in such a vast and beautiful environment. He watched seabirds glide overhead and saw the occasional seal popping its head above the water, curious about the lone kayaker passing by. It was the kind of day that made all the effort of getting out of bed early worthwhile. Jake decided to paddle toward a small island a few miles off the coast. The island, a rocky outcrop surrounded by deep blue water, was one of his favorite spots. The journey there would take a couple of hours, but Jake was in no hurry. He savored the journey, enjoying the sense of freedom that came with being out on the water, far from the noise and stress of everyday life. As he approached the island, the water became slightly choppier, but it was nothing Jake couldn't handle. He had navigated through much rougher conditions before. The sun was high in the sky, and Jake considered taking a break on the island, maybe eating the lunch he had packed and enjoying the view before heading back to the mainland. But as he continued paddling, something in the water caught his eye. A dark shape moved beneath the surface, large and fast. Jake's heart skipped a beat, but he remained calm, knowing that many large fish and sea mammals lived in these waters. But then the shape moved closer, and Jake realized it was not just any sea creature. It was a bull shark, one of the most aggressive and unpredictable sharks in the ocean. Before Jake could fully comprehend the situation, the shark rammed into the side of his kayak with incredible force. The impact was so sudden and powerful that it knocked Jake into the water, flipping the kayak over and leaving him struggling to stay afloat. The cold water shocked his system, but there was no time to think. The shark was circling him, its dorsal fin cutting through the water like a knife, coming closer with each pass. Panic set in as Jake frantically tried to right his kayak, but the shark wasn't giving him a chance. It was clearly agitated, its behavior aggressive as it prepared to strike again. Jake grabbed onto the side of the kayak, trying to pull himself back on, but the shark came at him, its jaws snapping shut around his leg with terrifying force. The pain was immediate and excruciating. The shark's teeth dug deep into his flesh, and Jake could feel the power of the predator as it tried to pull him under. Blood poured from the wound, turning the water around him red. Jake fought back with everything he had, using his paddle to strike at the shark, desperate to free himself from its grip. He knew that if he went under, it would be over. The shark released his leg, but it wasn't done. It circled back, ramming the kayak again, trying to knock Jake off balance. The kayak was now listing dangerously, water filling the cockpit as the shark continued its assault. Jake managed to get one leg back into the kayak, but the shark struck again, its body slamming into the kayak with such force that it nearly capsized. The situation was dire, and Jake knew he had to stay calm if he wanted to survive. With sheer willpower, Jake continued to fend off the shark, using his paddle as a weapon to keep it at bay. Each time the shark came close, he struck out, hoping to deter it long enough to escape. His leg was throbbing with pain, the blood loss making him feel lightheaded, but he couldn't give up. He had to keep fighting. Then, in the distance, Jake saw a boat, a small fishing vessel heading in his direction. He waved his arms frantically, shouting for help, even as the shark made another pass. The boat's occupants saw the commotion and quickly changed course, speeding toward Jake. The sight of the boat gave him a surge of hope, but the shark wasn't done yet. As the boat approached, the shark made one final attempt to take Jake down, lunging at the kayak and grabbing hold of it with its powerful jaws. The kayak shook violently, and Jake nearly lost his grip, but he held on, striking the shark repeatedly until it finally let go. The boat arrived just in time, the crew pulling Jake aboard as the shark swam off, disappearing into the deep. Jake collapsed on the deck, his body shaking with pain and exhaustion. His leg was badly injured, and the blood loss had left him weak, but he was alive. The crew quickly tended to his wounds, applying pressure to stop the bleeding as they headed back to shore. The attack left Jake with severe injuries and a deep respect for the power of the ocean. The bull shark, one of the most feared predators in the sea, had nearly claimed another victim. As Jake lay on the deck staring up at the clear blue sky, he knew that he had come close to losing everything. But he had survived. And that was something to be grateful for. The Arctic, a land of ice and mystery, stretched endlessly beneath the clear, crisp sky. Here, amid the unrelenting cold and stark beauty, a team of 3 scientists had set up their research station aboard a small vessel. Leo, a marine biologist with a penchant for understanding deep-sea creatures, had long dreamed of studying the orcas in their natural habitat. The other 2 were Kaya and Theodore. The vessel bobbed gently in the frigid waters, a speck of human ingenuity in a vast expanse of nature. Their mission was clear: study the behaviors and interactions of the orcapods that frequented these waters. For weeks, the team had observed these majestic creatures, marveling at their grace and intelligence. Orcas were known to be curious but typically non-aggressive towards humans and their vessels. This made the recent behavior all the more baffling. It was mid-July, a time when the Arctic summer bathed the ice and sea in a perpetual twilight, casting long shadows and surreal hues. The team had just completed another day of data collection and was preparing to settle in for the night. Leo was cataloging their observations, meticulously noting the subtle interactions within the pod they had been tracking. Kaya and Theodore sat on a chair chatting. Suddenly, without warning, a thundering impact shook the vessel. Leo's coffee cup toppled off the table, smashing on the floor. Startled, the team rushed to the deck, hearts pounding with the unexpected adrenaline rush. The scene that greeted them was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. A pod of orcas, their sleek black and white bodies cutting through the water, were circling the vessel. These creatures, usually symbols of elegance and intelligence, now seemed menacing. One of the larger males rammed the side of the vessel again, causing it to lurch violently. The team clung to the railings, eyes wide with disbelief. Leo's mind raced through possible explanations. Could they have encroached on the pod's territory? Was there something in the water that had agitated them? Kaya, her scientific curiosity piqued despite the danger, tried to capture the behavior on camera, her hands trembling as she adjusted the focus. Theodore was already assessing the damage to their vessel. Another powerful strike jolted the vessel. The orcas seemed to be working in a coordinated manner, a display of their renowned intelligence, but now turned against the scientists. Leo shouted for everyone to brace themselves as the impact sent waves crashing over the deck. The team knew they had to act quickly. Their small research vessel, sturdy though it was, would not withstand this assault for long. Leo and Kaya worked feverishly to secure their equipment, prioritizing the most valuable data and tools. Theodore focused on stabilizing the vessel, but it was clear that their best hope lay in reaching their larger support ship, anchored a few miles away. With a hastily formed plan, they began transmitting distress signals, hoping the bigger ship would receive them in time. The orcas, relentless and seemingly unyielding, continued their barrage. Time seemed to stretch as the attacks continued. The orcas' behavior was methodical, almost strategic. It was as if they were aware of the weak points in the vessel's structure. Despite the situation, Kaya noted the precision with which they struck, targeting specific areas repeatedly. It was a chilling reminder of the intelligence these creatures possessed. With the larger ship finally in sight, a sense of cautious relief washed over the team. The larger vessel represented safety and a chance to regroup, but the journey there was fraught with peril. The orcas showed no sign of relenting. Their aggression was as intense as when the assault began. The ship, upon receiving the distress signal, had already begun preparations for their arrival. The crew, experienced in Arctic conditions, understood the gravity of the situation. They deployed smaller support boats, ready to assist in the transfer of the team and their critical equipment. As the smaller vessel limped towards the big ship, the orcas' attacks intensified. It was as if they sensed the impending escape and were determined to prevent it. The team's coordination and quick thinking were put to the ultimate test. Leo and Kaya worked tirelessly to stabilize the vessel and safeguard their research, while Theodore focused on keeping the engines running, pushing them toward the sanctuary of the ship. The smaller support boats, guided by the experienced crew, maneuvered skillfully in the turbulent waters. The orcas, undeterred, continued their assault, making the transfer a perilous endeavor. Equipment was ferried across first, each piece representing hours of invaluable data and research. Leo was the last to leave the vessel, his heart heavy with the thought of abandoning the vessel that had been their home and base of operations. As he climbed onto the support boat, he cast a final glance at the boat, now heavily laden from the sustained impacts. The orcas, seemingly triumphant, continued to circle the crippled vessel. Once aboard the big ship, the team regrouped. The larger ship's sturdy structure and experienced crew provided a stark contrast to the precarious situation they had just escaped. Leo, Kaya, and Theodore, though shaken, were already discussing their observations and theories about the orcas' behavior. Leo pored over their collected data, searching for clues, while Kaya reviewed the footage, looking for any behavioral cues that might explain the hostility. The support ship's captain, an experienced Arctic navigator, also offered his insights. He had seen unusual behaviors in marine life before, often triggered by environmental changes or disruptions. Their ordeal highlighted the unpredictable nature of these intelligent predators. The Arctic, with its beauty and dangers, had once again proven to be a place where survival and scientific discovery were inextricably linked. 2014 kayaking holiday with the Williamson family down the Daly River in the Northern Territory of Australia has become any family's worst nightmare after the kayakers entered saltwater crocodile territory. Michael and Sarah Williamson, with their 12-year-old son Jack, had been luxuriating in the lush, winding waterways, diving headfirst into the wildest beauty the Australian outback had to offer. As the paddling extended further upstream into the estuary, all the excitement within the family members suddenly turned into anxiety. The earlier attractive water became murky, and the vegetation was fast, giving long shadows along the shore. Sarah turned to Michael and shared her uneasy feelings about the surroundings. At first, Jack could only make out that most dreadful confirmation of their worst fears, a half-submerged log off the bank. Dismayed, they suddenly saw it was nothing but the unmistakable shape of a huge saltwater crocodile, with only its half-submerged eyes out of the water. With great self-restraint, Michael instructed his family to stay calm, begin paddling toward shore, and not make any sudden movements. They did just that, paddling slowly, not taking their eyes off the unmoving predator. Every second it seemed like they would make it to shore without any problems. But almost immediately all those dreams came crashing down as the crocodile lunged at them suddenly in the next instant, with frightful velocity. Michael screamed at his family, asking them to paddle for their lives, the ferocious paddling turning away from rowing with wild abandon as they splashed water in the air and rowed towards the nearest bank. But the effort proved in vain. The crocodile matched their pace and was faster. Its bulk easily cleaved the water. In a pulse-pounding moment, the creature sprang, its enormous jaws clamping onto the back of Michael and Jack's kayak. The force of the attack sent both father and son tumbling into the depths, and Sarah watched helplessly in horror as her husband and son disappeared beneath the surface. She had already arrived near the bank in her kayak. The paternal instincts came to the fore as Michael managed to panic in the water. Breaking the surface and gasping, he looked around for Jack. As luck would have it, Jack's head broke the water's surface a few meters away, then coughed and spluttered. Michael shouted to Sarah to throw them the paddles from her kayak. As Michael and Jack grabbed the paddles, the water splashed around them. The crocodile had finished their kayak and was now on its living target. Michael told Jack to keep close to him as he was getting ready to fight off this creature. Ancient, predatory eyes watched the pitiful humans as the great beast charged. With all his strength, Michael struck the reptile's nose, and though Jack shivered with fear, he boldly followed his father's lead. Father and son swung at the gator's muzzle together as the menace lunged again. Sarah stayed in her kayak, torn between the drive to save her family and the realization that she would just end up dead in the water if she got in. That was when she decided to splash as much as possible with her paddle to distract the crocodile. Michael took the opportunity as the croc was about to let go of his meal and instructed Jack to swim toward the shore. As Sarah swam to the bank, she noticed a small rocky island only a couple of yards from the beach and motioned them toward it as it was much nearer than the bank. The family fought helplessly, with Sarah paddling toward Jack and Michael, prepared to whack the crocodile away if it pushed closer. The crocodile lunged one more time as they neared the island, and its jaws snapped shut just a few inches from Jack's legs. In one last surge of furious protection, Michael smacked his paddle at the crocodile's head with increasing force, hitting it on the side of its head and momentarily stunning it. It was all they needed, his tiny moment of hesitation. With a final burst of energy, they hauled themselves onto the jagged shore of the small island. Gasping for breath, they collapsed on the rough ground, their bodies trembling from sheer exhaustion and overwhelming fear. Michael quickly checked to see if everyone was all right, while Sarah, consumed by relief, clung tightly to Jack, vowing never to let him go. In what seemed a never-ending day, the family tried to nap on a little haven near the rocky island, where the sun had started setting and casting long shadows on the water. The crocodile did not move further. It just sat a fixed presence with its prehistoric eyes, never leaving Sarah. She blamed Michael for what had happened. It was meant to be a fun family vacation, but now it has become a nightmare. Michael apologized for not researching the area better, but Jack told his father that no one could have known about the crocodiles. The sounds of the Australian wild seemed amplified, merging with Jack's soft whines as he shivered, cold and wet. Sarah tried to comfort him with stories of happier times, recalling better experiences. The family shared a quiet laugh, remembering the infamous sunburn that had left Michael's neck and back painfully red during a previous beach trip. The memory brought a brief moment of warmth and connection, easing the tension of their current ordeal. Michael told them he'd check the island's perimeter to find a better place to signal for help. While he was out, Jack asked his mother if they were going to die on this island. Sarah pacified her little boy, saying that more often than not, being brave doesn't mean that a person is not scared, just that he should have done what he needed. Michael came back, assuring his family that the island was not that big, but he had found a slight rise where they would be recognized easily by anyone looking around for them. What followed was long hours of silent and motionless watch over the crocodile, sometimes diving under the water and coming up again nearer the island, testing their nerve. As the first light of dawn began to break, Jack heard the distant sound of a helicopter engine. As the helicopter appeared over the tree line with its searchlight across the river, the family began waving their arms aloft and shouting at the tops of their heads. There was a harrowing moment when it almost seemed that the helicopter would bypass them altogether. But then the beams swiveled toward them as it caught their little island with its cast of light. A rescue worker was winched onto the island, quickly confirming their identities before rapidly assessing the situation. He urged them to move quickly. The crocodile remained in the area. One by one, the family was lifted into the helicopter, each feeling relief. As they ascended, they finally caught a glimpse of the full size of the colossal, prehistoric-looking creature that had relentlessly pursued them, its massive form a stark reminder of their narrow escape. As they all huddled together inside the helicopter, the family was clutching on one another, bringing home the full realization of their ordeal and how close they were to death that afternoon. The pilot said they were lucky, as few people survived encounters with saltwater crocodiles. The Williamson were fortunate to have survived the ordeal as they left the island with the crocodile still roaming in the waters, probably looking for other prey. The bond within the Williamson family had been tested and solidified unimaginably. Their kayaking trip might have turned deadly, but love, dedication, and determination had seen it through. The memory of their encounter with the crocodile would be etched into them forever, a testament to their resiliency and the power of family. Arthur had always dreamed of visiting the Maldives. The turquoise waters, pristine beaches, and vibrant marine life called to him, promising an escape from the drudgery of his everyday life. He saved for years, meticulously planning every detail of his trip. When he finally arrived, the Maldives exceeded even his wildest expectations. Arthur signed up for a snorkeling tour on his second day. eager to explore the underwater world that lay just beyond the shore. The tour group consisted of a few other tourists, each as excited as he was. Their guide, a local named Kaleo, was knowledgeable and passionate about the marine environment. Kaleo briefed them on safety protocols and the importance of respecting marine life. He handed out the snorkeling gear and led the group to a secluded part of the reef, away from the crowded tourist spots. The water was as clear as glass, allowing Arthur to see the vibrant coral formations and a kaleidoscope of fish swimming below. He floated effortlessly, marveling at the colors and shapes. Schools of fish darted around him, their scales catching the sunlight and creating a dazzling display. He saw sea turtles gliding gracefully through the water and small sharks patrolling the reef, their movements fluid and unthreatening. Arthur felt a gentle tug on his fin and turned to see Kaleo gesturing for the group to follow him. They swam towards a more open area of the reef, where the coral gave way to a sandy bottom. Arthur was cautious, remembering Kaleo's warning about disturbing marine life. He floated above the sand, scanning the area for any sign of movement. Without warning, Arthur felt a sharp, searing pain shoot through his foot. He recoiled, gasping for breath through his snorkel. The water around him seemed to darken, and he looked down to see a stingray darting away, its tail flicking in a way that suggested irritation. He realized he had accidentally stepped on the hidden creature, and it had defended itself with a strike from its venomous barb. The pain was excruciating, radiating from his foot up to his leg. He tried to swim back to the group, but his muscles felt weak and unresponsive. Panic set in as he struggled to stay afloat. The water that had seemed so inviting now felt like a hostile environment, with every ripple and shadow a potential threat. Kaleo noticed Arthur's distress immediately. He swam over with powerful strokes, reaching Arthur in seconds. Assessing the situation quickly, Kaleo signaled for the rest of the group to surface and stay close while he tended to Arthur. With practiced efficiency, Kaleo supported Arthur and began swimming towards the shore. Each movement sent fresh waves of pain through Arthur's leg, but Kaleo's calm presence provided some measure of reassurance. As they reached the shallows, Kaleo helped Arthur onto the beach and laid him down gently. The pain had not subsided. If anything, it seemed to be intensifying. Arthur's foot was swelling rapidly, and the skin around the wound was turning an angry red. His breathing was shallow, and he felt lightheaded, teetering on the edge of consciousness. Kaleo acted swiftly. He knew that stingray venom could cause severe reactions and that time was of the essence. He grabbed the first aid kit he always carried and began treating the wound. First, he washed it thoroughly with seawater, trying to flush out as much venom as possible. Then he applied pressure to slow the spread of the toxin. Arthur could barely register what was happening. His world had shrunk to a pinpoint of agony and fear. The other tourists watched in stunned silence. The idyllic setting suddenly transformed into a scene of urgency and distress. Kaleo instructed one of them to call for emergency medical assistance, knowing that Arthur needed professional care as quickly as possible. Minutes felt like hours as they waited, the tension palpable in the humid air. The island's emergency response team arrived in a small boat. Their movements were brisk and efficient. They lifted Arthur onto a stretcher and carried him to the boat, with Kaleo explaining the situation in rapid-fire local dialect. The boat sped towards the nearest medical facility. The ride was a blur for Arthur. He drifted in and out of consciousness, his body betraying him as the venom continued to spread. When they reached the shore, he was rushed into a small clinic, where a team of doctors and nurses took over. They worked quickly, administering anti-venom and painkillers, monitoring his vital signs and ensuring he was stable. Arthur's world became a haze of medical procedures and concerned faces. The pain slowly began to subside as the medication took effect, and he could feel the strength returning to his limbs. The doctors explained that he had been fortunate. The stingray's barb had missed any major arteries, and Kaleo's prompt actions had prevented the venom from causing more serious damage. As the immediate crisis passed, Arthur had time to reflect on what had happened. He had come to the Maldives seeking beauty and adventure, but he had also found a lesson in respect and awareness. Lying in the clinic bed, Arthur thought about the stingray. It had not attacked out of malice. It had simply reacted to a perceived threat. He realized how easily he could have avoided the incident if he had been more mindful of his surroundings. The guide's warnings had been clear, but in his excitement, he had let his guard down. The days that followed were a slow recovery for Arthur. He remained in the clinic under observation, and the staff was attentive and kind. Kaleo visited him regularly, bringing news from the tour group and updates on the vibrant marine life that continued to thrive just beyond the shore. Arthur's fellow tourists also stopped by, expressing their relief at his recovery and sharing stories of their own experiences. As his strength returned, Arthur found himself eager to return to the water despite the ordeal he had been through. The ocean still called to him, but now he heard its call with a newfound respect. When he was finally discharged from the clinic, he made his way back to the beach where the incident had occurred. He stood at the edge of the shore, watching the waves roll in and out, contemplating his next move. Arthur knew he would snorkel again, but this time with a deeper understanding of the world he was entering. The sun was an unforgiving orb in the cloudless sky, casting sharp, scintillating rays upon the Gulf of Mexico. It was the kind of day that beckoned explorers, thrill-seekers, and adventurers to the open sea. For Kylie, a seasoned diver with a penchant for the adrenaline rush of spearfishing, it was the perfect day to hunt the elusive and prized fish that lurked beneath the waves. Kylie and his dive partner Brett had ventured far from the shore, their small but sturdy boat now a mere dot on the vast ocean surface. They had planned this trip meticulously, waiting for the right conditions when the water was clear and the currents were favorable. Spearfishing in the open waters of the Gulf required not just skill and precision, but also a keen awareness of the dangers that could suddenly emerge from the depths. Kylie was in her element. With his spear gun in hand, he descended into the clear, warm waters, the surface above gradually fading into a shimmering blur as he went deeper. Schools of vibrant fish darted around him, their scales glinting like precious gems in the filtered sunlight. He moved with practiced ease, his body a graceful, streamlined form amidst the underwater world. The hunt has been successful so far. Kylie had already speared a couple of sizable fish, their wriggling forms now securely attached to his stringer. He felt a surge of satisfaction. Each successful catch was a testament to his skill and patience. He was about to ascend, his mind already drifting to the thought of the fresh catch and the stories he would share with Brett, when a flicker of movement caught his eye. It was a blur at first, a shadow moving with unnerving speed and grace. Kylie's heart began to pound as the shadow materialized into the sleek, streamlined form of a mako shark. It was a magnificent creature. Its body was a perfect blend of power and agility. But there was no time to admire its beauty. The shark had caught the scent of the fish Kylie had speared, and it was coming in fast. Panic threatened to overtake Kylie, but he forced himself to remain calm. He knew the ocean was the shark's domain, a realm where he was merely a visitor. Every instinct screamed at him to flee, but he knew better than to turn his back on a predator. The shark made its first pass, a swift, probing movement that sent a jolt of fear through Kylie's body. He clutched his spear gun tighter, aware that it was his only means of defense. The boat and Brett seemed impossibly far away. The mako shark was relentless. It darted closer, its movements a blur of speed and precision. Kylie swung his spear gun, trying to keep the shark at bay, but it was like trying to fend off a lightning bolt. Kylie could feel his strength waning and his muscles burning with exertion. The adrenaline that had initially fueled his movements was beginning to ebb, replaced by bone-deep fatigue. The shark, sensing his weakening resolve, grew bolder. It made another pass, this time grazing Kylie's leg with the tip of its fin. The contact, though brief, was enough to send a wave of pain through his body, and he knew he was running out of time. Kylie knew he couldn't give up, not now. With a renewed burst of energy, he kicked towards the surface, his lungs burning for air. The shark followed, relentless and hungry. It made another lunge, and this time, Kylie struck out with his spear gun, the tip grazing the shark's snout. The creature recoiled, giving Kylie a precious few seconds to push further upwards. The surface was tantalizingly close now. Kylie could see the underside of the boat and could almost hear Brett shouting words of encouragement. But the shark was not done. It came at him again, this time from below, its jaws snapping shut just inches from his feet. Kylie's vision was beginning to blur from the lack of oxygen, and his movements were growing sluggish. Then, just as the shark prepared for another attack, a burst of bright red flared in the water. Brett had fired the flare gun, and the sudden light and noise startled the shark. It hesitated, confused by the unexpected assault. Kylie seized the moment, kicking with all his remaining strength towards the boat. Brett was waiting, his arm outstretched. With a final, desperate effort, Kylie grabbed hold and was hauled onto the deck. He collapsed, gasping for breath, his body trembling with exhaustion and relief. The shark lingered for a moment, its dark eyes watching them, before it finally turned and disappeared into the depths. For a few minutes, neither Kylie nor Brett spoke. The reality of what had just transpired settled over them like a heavy shroud. Kylie lay on the deck, the sun's warmth a stark contrast to the cold fear that still gripped him. He could hear the rhythmic lapping of the waves against the hull, a soothing sound that slowly calmed his racing heart. As the adrenaline began to fade, Kylie became acutely aware of the throbbing pain in his leg where the shark's fin had grazed him. Brett kneeled beside him, examining the wound with a practiced eye. It was a superficial injury, but it served as a harsh reminder of how close he had come to a far worse fate. During the summer of 2005, Jake Anderson moved to his favorite underwater wonderland, the fine kelp forests of Monterey, California. The 32-year-old marine biologist had spent hundreds of hours studying the vast life of the sea, but had never seen one of the most elusive and captivating creatures of the deep, the giant Pacific octopus. As Jake drifted down into the thick kelp canopy, his mind was racing about how he would document this complex ecosystem. He had heard rumors of enormous octopuses hovering in the dark, although he hadn't seen one with his naked eyes. Then, as he swam through an exceptionally thick patch of kelp, he felt a sudden, sharp tug on his ankle. Instinctively, Jake looked down to see a giant tentacle wrapped around his leg, pulling him deeper into the forest. His heart began racing as he realized he was in the grip of a mighty octopus. In only moments, the 8 strong limbs of the creature wrapped around his leg, and Jake could feel a beak, for tearing open the shells of crabs and clams close to his flesh. Panic set in as he struggled to free himself. He shook his leg, trying to break the creature's grip, but the octopus held tight. Jake knew he had to think fast. He was running out of oxygen. Jake went for his dive knife, but every move was challenging in the thick kelp forest. As the octopus pulled him deeper, Jake thought quickly about escaping this difficult situation. He had never fathomed a time when his fascination with the marine world would have him in such immediate danger. Fueled with adrenaline, the determination to survive burned. But the strength in those octopus arms was immense. His hand struck a large boulder on the sea floor, which he clutched firmly and swung against the octopus's head. The blow connected with a dull thud, and for just a second the octopus broke its hold. Jake used that second to kick his leg free, but then the octopus regained its senses and came at him once again. Knowing he was running out of time, Jake desperately swam toward the surface, his strokes retarded by the heavy kelp. He was being pursued by the octopus with long tentacles reaching out, trying to snare back its prey. Jake could feel the suction cups of the creature rake across his skin, and he knew he needed to make one last push to get away. As he broke through the surface, Jake gasped for air, his lungs on fire from the effort. He looked around until he saw the octopus's tentacles slipping beneath the waves, an outstanding example of tenacity and vigor in a creature. Shaken by the experience, he swam back toward shore with all possible speed, his mind reeling from the narrow escape from death. Once ashore, Jake related this harrowing incident to his colleagues at the Monterey Bay Aquarium, where he worked as a marine biologist. The story spread all around the public imagination, captivated by the account of that elusive nature, the giant Pacific octopus. The experience haunted him. He had always known how heavy and unpredictable the ocean's punch could be, but this encounter had brought him face to face with a giant Pacific octopus. He finally decided to continue his research to learn more about such wonderful creatures and their location in the balance of these sensitive ecosystems of the kelp forests. Jake's brush with the giant Pacific octopus had left an indelible mark on his psyche. As he lay in bed that night, the memory of the creature's tentacles coiling around his leg replaying vividly in his mind, he couldn't help but feel a profound sense of respect and wonder. The ocean, it seemed, was filled with wonders yet to be discovered. And Jake knew that this harrowing encounter would forever shape his future as a marine biologist. With a renewed passion and determination, he resolved to continue his research, determined to unravel the mysteries of the giant Pacific octopus and the remarkable ecosystem it called home. For Jake, the kelp forests of Monterey would forever hold a special and slightly ominous place in his heart. The morning sun filtered through the Great Barrier Reef as Lucas descended into the water, casting a kaleidoscope of light that danced across the vibrant corals. As Lucas floated effortlessly, the world above seemed a distant memory, and he was wholly immersed in this breathtaking underwater realm. Lucas had studied the reef's ecosystem for years, and now, experiencing it firsthand was exhilarating. Time slipped away as he ventured deeper into this mesmerizing world. An experienced snorkeler, Lucas was accustomed to the occasional curious fish and the rare sight of larger creatures. He knew to respect marine life and its delicate balance. However, the reef, despite its apparent peace, held its dangers. Navigating a narrow passage between two large coral formations, Lucas noticed a subtle shift in the water. A small reef shark, about 6 feet long, appeared, its sleek body cutting through the water with purpose. While the shark's presence was fascinating, it also signaled an imminent threat. The shark, likely a juvenile but still formidable, began to exhibit deliberate, tense movements as it approached Lucas. Lucas, absorbed in the moment, moved closer to get a better view, inadvertently encroaching on the shark's territory. The shark's behavior shifted, its body tensed, and its movements became sharper. As Lucas hovered near the shark, it turned its head, its eyes narrowing in assessment. In an instant, the shark closed the distance, and before Lucas could react, its jaws clamped down on his arm. The initial pain was searing, a shock that radiated through his entire body. He looked down in horror at the shark's teeth embedded in his flesh, blood mingling with the surrounding water. Panicked, Lucas thrashed wildly, trying to dislodge the shark. His frantic movements only tightened the shark's grip, intensifying the pain. The vibrant colors of the reef were overshadowed by the red cloud of blood trailing behind him. Struggling to push the shark away, Lucas found the water thick and resistant, each movement slow and difficult. His heart raced, and his breathing grew erratic as the once beautiful reef turned into a dangerous trap. The shark's grip remained unyielding, its sharp and relentless teeth cut deeper with every movement. Lucas's arm felt as if it were on fire, the searing pain blending with a profound sense of dread. The blood that stained the water could attract other predators, and the thought of a more dangerous encounter added to his terror. He knew he had to escape, but the struggle to free himself from the shark's jaws was an arduous battle. With every ounce of strength left, Lucas fought against the shark's tenacity. He twisted and turned, trying to dislodge the creature from his arm. The struggle seemed eternal, each second stretching into what felt like hours. The coral formations around him became a chaotic blur as he desperately tried to orient himself. Finally, with a surge of adrenaline, Lucas managed to break free from the shark's grip. The shark, having realized that its attack had failed to subdue its prey, retreated with a swift flick of its tail. It darted away into the depths, leaving Lucas alone in the water, his arm a throbbing, bloody mess. The immediate danger had passed, but Lucas's situation was far from safe. He looked around, his vision clouded by the blood in the water. The reef, which had seemed so inviting moments before, now felt hostile and treacherous. With a grim sense of urgency, Lucas began to make his way towards the surface. His movements were slow and difficult, each stroke of his flipper a painful reminder of his injury. The journey back to the surface was agonizing. Every movement caused waves of pain to shoot through his arm. He could feel the warm blood trickling from his wound, adding a grim sense of urgency to his struggle. The thought of other predators attracted by his blood pushed him to move faster despite the searing pain. Lucas's breath came in ragged gasps as he neared the surface. The sun's rays, once a source of comfort, now seemed distant and unreachable. The water around him grew lighter, and the boat that had brought him to this location came into view. Its presence was a beacon of hope, a sign of safety amidst the chaos. As Lucas finally reached the boat, he clung to the side with his uninjured arm, his body trembling from the exertion and pain. The crew, seeing his distressed state, quickly pulled him aboard. The relief of being out of the water was immense, But the reality of his injury was a sobering sight. His arm was a mess of blood and torn flesh, a grim reminder of the encounter. The crew acted swiftly, administering first aid and preparing to get Lucas to medical attention. The pain was unbearable, but the knowledge that he was out of immediate danger provided some comfort. The wound was treated and the boat began its return journey. The vibrant reef that had once been a source of wonder is now a backdrop to Lucas's harrowing experience. As the boat made its way back to shore, Lucas reflected on the events of the day. The reef, with all its beauty, had revealed a darker side, a reminder of the unpredictable nature of the ocean. His encounter with the reef shark had been a stark lesson in the delicate balance between curiosity and caution. The pain and fear he had experienced were a testament to the raw power of nature and the respect it demanded. Lucas's injury required further treatment, and he would carry the physical and emotional scars of the encounter for years to come. The experience left him with a profound respect for the ocean and its inhabitants. The Great Barrier Reef, with all its beauty, had shown him that the allure of the underwater world was matched by its inherent dangers. It was a harsh but invaluable lesson, one that would forever shape his relationship with the ocean. January 1999, the summer heat was at its peak in Australia, and the coastal town of Port Carlisle was buzzing with activity. Tourists and locals alike flocked to the beach, eager to escape the sweltering temperatures. The beaches along this stretch of the coast were known for their clear waters and white sands, making them a favorite spot for families and young people. Among the crowds that day was 14-year-old Josh Carter, a towering boy for his age, already weighing over 200 pounds due to his large frame and athletic build. Josh was a natural athlete playing rugby at his school, and his size and strength made him a force to be reckoned with on the field. Josh was on vacation with his parents and a group of friends from school. They had spent the morning playing beach volleyball, eating snacks, and enjoying the sun. By early afternoon, the heat had become almost unbearable, and the group decided to cool off with a swim in the ocean. The beach was well patrolled, and though shark sightings were not unheard of in these waters, the area was generally considered safe for swimmers. Lifeguards kept a close watch, and the water was filled with families and children, all enjoying the cool relief from the summer sun. Josh and his friends splashed into the water, laughing and challenging each other to swim out to the deeper waves. The ocean was calm, the waves gently lapping against their bodies as they swam further from the shore. The sounds of seagulls filled the air, and the smell of salt water and sunscreen was strong. It was the perfect day, the kind of day that makes you forget about the dangers that can lie hidden beneath the surface. The boys swam out beyond the crowded shallows, where the water was deeper and the waves more challenging. Josh, always eager to prove himself, led the way, his strong strokes propelling him further out than the others. The water here was cooler, and the depth made it harder to see the bottom. But Josh wasn't concerned. He was confident in his swimming abilities and felt at home in the water. However, Josh and his friends didn't know that on this day a massive great white shark was patrolling the waters nearby. The shark, nearly 18 feet long, had been drawn closer to shore by the presence of seals and schools of fish, its natural prey. Great white sharks are apex predators, and their size and power make them one of the most feared creatures in the ocean. Though they rarely target humans, mistaking them for seals can lead to tragic encounters. As Josh swam further from the shore, his friends began to call out to him, urging him to turn back. But he was focused on the waves ahead, his mind on the thrill of the swim. The water around him was calm, the surface unbroken by any signs of danger. Yet beneath him, the great white shark had taken notice of the large figure moving through the water. In a flash, the shark moved. The calm water was shattered as the massive predator surged upwards, its powerful tail propelling it at terrifying speed. Josh barely had time to register the movement beneath him before the great white struck with a force that sent shockwaves through the water. The shark's jaws clamped down on Josh's side, the sheer power of the bite nearly cutting him in half. The impact was so sudden and violent that it knocked the breath from his lungs, and he was pulled under the water before he could even scream. The water, once clear and blue, turned crimson as blood poured from the wound. The shark's teeth, sharp as knives, tore through flesh and bone with ease, its powerful body thrashing as it tried to subdue its prey. Josh's friends, still swimming closer to shore, turned at the sound of the water's violent disturbance. Their eyes widened in horror as they saw the massive dorsal fin breaking the surface, the water around it stained with blood. Panic set in, and they began to shout for help, their voices filled with terror. On the beach, people began to notice the commotion. Lifeguards sprang into action, blowing their whistles and waving people out of the water. But it was already too late. The great white shark, driven by its predatory instincts, had pulled Josh deeper into the ocean. The boy's struggles were no match for the shark's strength, and with each thrash of its powerful tail, it dragged him further from safety. Josh's body was limp, the pain overwhelming as he tried to fight back. But the shark was relentless, its jaws crushing down with every bite. The water around them was a chaotic mix of blood and foam, the once peaceful ocean now a scene of unimaginable horror. The beach, so full of life just moments before, had fallen into stunned silence as onlookers watched the tragedy unfold. Despite the lifeguards' desperate attempts to reach him, the shark's assault was too much. It took Josh down once more, disappearing into the depths with its prey. The water slowly began to calm, the waves washing away the blood, leaving behind only the broken remains of a surfboard and the haunting memory of what had just occurred. The beach, once filled with laughter and joy, was now overshadowed by the brutal reality of nature's power. The attack left the community in shock, a stark reminder of the dangers that lurk beneath the ocean's surface. Patrols were increased, and shark warnings became a common sight. But the memory of that day would linger long after the summer ended. It was a brisk morning in the year 2009 along the rugged Oregon coast, where the sound of crashing waves and the salty tang of the sea air permeated the air. A 28-year-old avid surfer, Anna Schofield, was eager to catch the perfect wave before the crowds arrived. She had been surfing this stretch of coastline for years. Still, that day she was about to encounter a shocking and terrifying experience that would forever change her perspective on the ocean's unpredictable inhabitants. As Anna paddled out on her sleek turquoise surfboard, she couldn't help but feel a sense of exhilaration. The water was colder than usual, but the prospect of riding a clean, unbroken wave was too enticing to ignore. She had heard whispers of aggressive sea lions in the area, but dismissed the rumors, confident in her ability to navigate the ocean's currents. Suddenly, a massive shape emerged from the depths, slamming into the side of Anna's board with tremendous force. Taken by surprise, she struggled to regain her balance as she witnessed a massive bull-like sea lion propel itself into the air, its jaws wide open. In a split second, the animal latched onto Anna's leg, sinking its sharp teeth deep into her flesh. Panic surged through Anna's veins as the sea lion's powerful jaws tightened around her limb. She fought to keep her head above the water, kicking and flailing desperately to free herself from the creature's grasp. The pain was excruciating, and Anna could feel the warm blood trickling down her leg, mingling with the cold seawater. Anna's surfboard shattered as the sea lion thrashed about, leaving her no means of escape. She knew she had to act quickly to survive this vicious attack. Mustering all her strength, she began to punch and claw at the animal's face, desperately trying to pry its jaws open. The sea lion, driven by its territorial instincts, refused to let go. It continued to drag Anna deeper into the churning waves, its massive body twisting and turning as it sought to subdue its prey. Anna's lungs burned, and her vision began to blur, but she refused to give up, her survival instinct overriding the pain and exhaustion. With a final, desperate effort, Anna managed to land a solid blow to the sea lion's nose, causing the animal to release its grip. Gasping for air, she began to frantically swim towards the shore, her injured leg trailing behind her. The sea lion, still agitated, circled her, waiting for another opportunity to strike. Anna's muscles ached and her leg throbbed with every stroke, but she refused to let the sea lion catch her again. Summoning every ounce of her strength, she pushed forward, her eyes fixed on the distant shoreline. As she neared the beach, she could see the silhouettes of bystanders who had witnessed the attack and were rushing to her aid. With a final desperate lunge, Anna reached the shallow water, collapsing onto the sand as the concerned onlookers surrounded her. The paramedics arrived moments later, quickly assessing her injuries and rushing her to the nearest hospital. She recovered slowly, and after 2 weeks she had recovered fully. In the aftermath of the attack, Anna's life was forever changed. The deep bite wounds on her leg would take months to heal, and the psychological trauma would linger long after the physical scars had faded. But through it all, she remained grateful to have survived the encounter with the territorial sea lion, a reminder of the unpredictable and sometimes dangerous nature of the ocean's inhabitants. Under the glittering surface of the Pacific Ocean, an otherworldly realm thrives, hidden from the prying eyes of those above. It was into this liquid labyrinth that Jack Mercer, a professional underwater photographer, descended on a crisp autumn morning. Jack had spent the better part of his life exploring the ocean's depths, his camera capturing the mysterious and magnificent creatures that called it home. The kelp forests, in particular, held a special allure for him. They were a place of stunning beauty, where shafts of sunlight pierced the water, casting a dappled glow on the forest floor, and where the rich biodiversity promised endless photographic opportunities. On this day, Jack was eager to capture the elusive wonders of this aquatic forest. His senses were attuned to every flicker of movement. Jack moved with practiced ease. His buoyancy was perfect, allowing him to hover effortlessly as he composed his shots. Time seemed to lose its meaning as he immersed himself in his work, the underwater world wrapping around him like a comforting cocoon. He captured images of playful sea otters weaving through the kelp, of a majestic leopard shark gliding past in search of prey, and of the delicate dance of the kelp itself, swaying to the rhythm of the ocean. As he ventured deeper into the kelp forest, Jack's attention was drawn to a particularly dense thicket of kelp, its fronds weaving a complex tapestry that beckoned him closer. He approached cautiously, the muted light creating an almost ethereal glow around him. His fingers brushed against the kelp as he navigated through the narrow passages, feeling the texture of the fronds and marveling at the intricate ecosystem they supported. It was in this moment of absorption that he felt the first touch, a gentle caress at first, almost like the brush of a lover's hand, but quickly escalating into something far more sinister. The tentacles of the giant Pacific octopus emerged from the shadows, wrapping around his legs and torso with alarming speed and strength. Panic surged through Jack as he struggled to comprehend what was happening. The octopus's grip was unyielding, its tentacles covered in powerful suction cups that latched onto his wetsuit and gear, pulling him closer to its beaked mouth. Instinct kicked in, and Jack fought back with every ounce of strength he could muster. His legs thrashed, trying to dislodge the tentacles, but the octopus was relentless, its grip tightening with each passing second. The calm, methodical photographer was now a man in the throes of a primal struggle for survival. His mind raced, searching for a way out, but the octopus's strength was overwhelming, its tentacles wrapping around him in a suffocating embrace. His hand found the handle of his diving knife, strapped securely to his thigh. With a swift motion, he drew the blade and began hacking at the tentacles, the water around him clouding with the ink released by the distressed octopus. Each cut severed a limb, but the octopus was not easily deterred. It fought back, its remaining tentacles thrashing wildly, trying to pull him into the depths. The struggle was a blur of motion and adrenaline. Jack's training and experience were the only things keeping him from succumbing to the octopus's grip. His muscles burned with exertion, and his lungs screamed for air. But he continued to slash at the tentacles, his determination unyielding. Slowly and agonizingly, he began to gain the upper hand. One by one, the tentacles fell away, and with a final, desperate effort, he freed himself from the octopus's grasp. His ascent to the surface was a race against time. The exertion had depleted his air supply, and he kicked hard, his eyes fixed on the distant light filtering through the water above. The journey seemed to stretch on forever, each second an eternity as he fought to stay conscious. His vision narrowed, the edges darkening as his body demanded oxygen, but he forced himself to keep going, driven by the primal urge to survive. When he finally broke the surface, he gasped for air, his lungs expanding painfully as they drew in precious oxygen. He floated on his back, the sky a brilliant blue canopy above him, the warmth of the sun a stark contrast to the cold depths he had just escaped. For a moment he simply lay there, his body trembling with the aftershocks of the ordeal, and his mind grappling with the enormity of what had just happened. Gradually his breathing steadied, and he turned onto his stomach, scanning the horizon for his boat. It was a small speck in the distance, bobbing gently on the waves, and he began to swim toward it, each stroke a reminder of his narrow escape. The water that had seemed so inviting and serene now felt like a vast, indifferent expanse, hiding dangers that could strike without warning. Reaching the boat, he hauled himself aboard, his limbs heavy and uncooperative. He collapsed onto the deck, the familiar creak of the wood a comforting sound. For a long while he lay there, the events replaying in his mind, the adrenaline gradually giving way to exhaustion. The sun moved across the sky, casting long shadows as he processed the magnitude of his encounter. In the quiet of the boat, surrounded by the endless expanse of the ocean, Jack felt a profound sense of both vulnerability and resilience. The ocean, with all its beauty and mystery, was a place of unimaginable power, and he had been reminded of this in the most visceral way. His camera, which had been a constant companion in his underwater explorations, now seemed like a fragile shield against the forces that lurked in the depths. Yet as the initial shock began to fade, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. The photographs he had captured and the story he would tell were testaments to the raw, untamed nature of the ocean. They were reminders of the delicate balance between beauty and danger, a balance that he had come to respect and revere. The kelp forests, with their enchanting allure, had revealed a darker side, but they had also shown him the depths of his own resilience. The boat bobbed gently on the calm waters of the Gulf of Mexico, its white hull contrasting sharply with the deep blue of the sea. The sun hung high, casting a golden glow that danced across the surface. Carla, standing at the helm, glanced at her dog, a small brown terrier named Max, who was barking incessantly at the edge of the boat. The noise was grating and Carla's patience was wearing thin. Max had been a constant companion, loyal and affectionate, but today, the incessant barking was too much. Carla had tried everything to calm him down. Treats, toys, gentle reprimands, but nothing worked. The dog's agitation seemed to heighten her frustration, creating a vicious cycle of irritation. With every yelp and whine, her resolve hardened. In a moment of reckless anger, Carla's patience snapped. Her face flushed with a mixture of rage and regret. She made a decision she would come to regret deeply. Without considering the full implications of her actions, Carla scooped up Max and, in a motion driven by frustration rather than logic, hurled him overboard. The splash that followed was immediate and loud, breaking the serene surface of the water. The instant Max hit the water, the sea's tranquility turned into a scene of impending dread. The splash attracted the attention of a group of sharks that had been circling the boat, their fins slicing through the water with predatory grace. Carla's heart lurched as she saw the fins moving closer, their menacing shapes cutting a path toward the splashing water where Max had landed. Horror washed over Carla as she watched the sharks close in on her small dog. The realization of her reckless decision hit her like a cold wave. Panic surged through her veins. Without thinking, she threw aside her fears and leaped into the water, her body hitting the sea with a jarring splash. Her mind was a frenzy of guilt and fear as she swam towards Max, who was paddling frantically, his small legs working hard to stay afloat. Sensing the disturbance, the sharks increased their pace. Their presence was a haunting reminder of the danger lurking beneath the surface. Carla's strokes were powerful but panicked, her breaths coming in ragged gasps as she approached Max. The water around her was frothy with churned-up waves and her frantic movements. Max's eyes were wide with terror as he struggled to stay afloat. Carla reached him just as the first shark's massive jaws snapped near him, the sharp teeth glinting ominously. Her heart raced, the proximity of the predator heightening her desperation. With every ounce of strength, Carla pushed Max ahead of her, guiding him toward the boat. Her kicks were erratic but forceful as she tried to fend off the sharks. She used her hands and feet to splash and create a barrier between the predators and her precious dog. Attracted by the commotion, the sharks were relentless. They circled with increasing aggression, their sleek bodies cutting through the water with unsettling precision. Carla's fear was palpable. She could feel their presence all too closely. Every moment felt like an eternity as she fought both the water and the predators. Her kicks were becoming less effective, her energy waning under the strain. The boat loomed ahead, its safety seeming both near and impossibly distant. Carla's friend Derek was on the deck, his eyes wide with horror as he saw the unfolding chaos. With adrenaline fueling her final burst of energy, Carla pushed Max towards the boat, her hands trembling as she signaled Derek for help. Derek, seizing the urgency of the moment, grabbed a rope and leaned over the edge of the boat, his movements swift and determined. Carla's struggle reached a peak of desperation. A shark's jaws snapped just inches from her leg, the rush of water from its bite sending a shiver down her spine. The proximity of the predator was a stark reminder of how close she was to disaster. With a final, Herculean effort, Carla managed to push Max up towards Derek. Her friend reached down, grabbed the small dog, and hauled him to safety with a swift pull. The relief on Derek's face was immediate, but Carla's ordeal was far from over. As Max was pulled aboard, Carla was left in the water exhausted and gasping. Her limbs felt leaden, her strength nearly spent. The sharks were still circling, their dark forms creating a barrier between her and safety. With every ounce of her remaining strength, Carla struggled to make her way towards the boat. Her movements were slow, her body feeling the weight of the fear and fatigue that had taken hold of her. Derek, realizing Carla was still in danger, acted quickly. He threw down a rope and extended a hand, his face etched with a mix of urgency and concern. Carla grabbed the rope, her fingers slipping as she fought against the fatigue and the pull of the water. Derek pulled her with determined effort, the rope digging into her hands as she climbed. The final moments were a blur of effort and relief as Carla was hauled back onto the deck. Collapsing onto the boat, Carla lay there, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The reality of what had transpired settled heavily upon her. Max, now safe and shaken, was being comforted by Derek, his small body trembling. Carla's hands and legs were scraped and bruised, her heart still racing from the adrenaline and fear. The near disaster had left her physically and emotionally drained. As Carla sat on the deck, wrapped in a blanket, her gaze fixed on the horizon, the total weight of her recklessness and the danger she had narrowly avoided was clear. The close call had been a brutal reminder of the unpredictable and often dangerous nature of the sea. The ordeal had shaken her to her core, leaving her with a deep sense of gratitude for the safety of her dog and herself, and a reminder of how a moment of anger could lead to unforeseen and life-threatening consequences.